Jake Morrison had always been a simple man with simple needs. A decent meal, a working ship, and a quiet place to sleep were all he asked for in life. At 32 years old, he had been flying cargo routes between human colonies for the better part of a decade. The work was boring but honest, and after his engagement fell apart 3 years ago, boring was exactly what he wanted. The starbound horizon wasn't much to look at. The freighter had seen better days, with hull plating that rattled during jumps and a coffee maker that only worked when you hit it in exactly the right spot. But she was his ship, or at least the ship he captained, and she had never let him down. Tonight's run had been standard. He had delivered mining equipment to Kepler 442b, picked up refined metals, and set the autopilot for New Terra. In 14 hours, he would wake up, dock at the station, collect his payment, and do it all over again. Jake kicked off his boots and fell onto his narrow bunk. The mattress was thin and the pillow was flat, but he had slept in worse places. He pulled up the thin blanket and closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep. The dreams came almost immediately. Strange colors swirled around him, colors he had never seen before and couldn't name. Voices spoke in languages that sounded like music, and mathematics merged together. He felt himself falling through space, but not the cold, empty space between stars. This space was warm and alive, pulsing with energy that made his skin tingle. Then everything went silent. When Jake opened his eyes, he knew immediately that something was very wrong. The ceiling above him wasn't the stained metal panels of his quarters. Instead, he was staring up at a dome made of crystal that seemed to glow from within. Soft light pulsed through it in waves, like a heartbeat. The colors shifted from deep purple to soft blue to warm amber, creating patterns that were almost hypnotic. He sat up quickly, his heart hammering in his chest. The bed beneath him wasn't his hard bunk. It was enormous, easily big enough for 4 people, and made of some kind of organic material that was warm and surprisingly comfortable. It seemed to respond to his movements, adjusting to support him perfectly. Jake looked down at himself and his confusion turned to alarm. His uniform was gone. Instead, he wore robes made of fabric that shimmered like oil on water. The colors changed as he moved, flowing from silver to gold to deep green. The material was softer than anything he had ever felt, but that didn't make him feel any better about wearing it. "What the hell?" he muttered, standing up. The floor beneath his bare feet was smooth and warm, with the same faint pulse of light he had seen in the ceiling. The chamber he was in was massive, with walls that curved upward into the crystalline dome. Strange plants grew from alcoves in the walls, their leaves glowing faintly in shades of blue and violet. The air smelled like something between cinnamon and rain. Pleasant, but completely alien. "You are awake. That is good." Jake spun around. The voice had come from behind him, and it spoke perfect English, with an accent he couldn't place. What he saw made him freeze in place. She stood near an archway he hadn't noticed before, and calling her beautiful didn't begin to cover it. She was tall, at least 7 feet, with skin that glowed a soft violet color. Her face was elegant and angular, with high cheekbones and large eyes that shifted and swirled like galaxies, full of stars and nebulae that actually moved. She had 4 arms, each moving with perfect grace, and her hair floated around her head as if she were underwater, glowing with the same inner light as everything else in this place. She wore a gown that made his robes look plain by comparison. It seemed to be made of liquid starlight, flowing and shifting with every breath she took. On her head sat a crown of what looked like crystallized lightning, frozen in the moment of striking. "Who are you?" Jake managed to ask. His voice came out rougher than he intended. "Where am I? What's going on?" The woman moved closer, and Jake noticed that she didn't exactly walk. She glided, her feet barely touching the floor. When she was a few feet away, she stopped and inclined her head slightly. "I am Zira Lin, Queen of the Vylorian Empire, Keeper of the 7 Stars, and Guardian of the Celestial Paths," she said. Her voice was musical, almost hypnotic. "And you, Jake Morrison of Earth, are my consort. My husband, as your people would say." Jake stared at her. Then, he laughed, though it came out more like a strangled cough. "Okay. This is a dream. I'm dreaming. That bad meat from the station finally caught up with me. This is not a dream," Cyrilyn said. There was no anger in her voice. Just patience. "Though I understand your confusion. Please, sit. I will explain." "I'd rather stand," Jake said, taking a step back. "I'd rather you tell me what's really going on. Did someone kidnap me? Is this some kind of joke?" Cyrilyn's eyes swirled a little faster, and Jake wondered if that meant she was annoyed. "No one has kidnapped you. You were chosen, through the ancient ritual of cosmic bonding. When you touched the artifact during your cargo delivery 3 cycles ago, you activated a marriage beacon." "A what?" Jake ran his hand through his hair. "Look, lady, I don't know what you're talking about. I delivered mining equipment. I didn't touch any artifact. The artifact was concealed within the equipment," Cyrilyn explained. "A small crystalline sphere, perhaps the size of your fist. You would have felt drawn to touch it. The pull would have been impossible to resist." Jake's mind raced back to the delivery. There had been something. When he was loading the last crate, he had seen something glowing inside. He had reached in, more curious than anything else, and touched a smooth sphere that was warm to the touch. The moment his fingers made contact, he had felt a jolt go through him, like static electricity but stronger. He had pulled his hand back, and the feeling had faded. He had forgotten about it almost immediately. "That was a marriage beacon?" he asked. "Yes. My people placed them across the galaxy millennia ago, searching for worthy partners from compatible species. The beacons are very selective. They only activate when touched by someone with the right qualities. Strength, intelligence, adaptability, courage. The beacon chose you." Jake sat down on the edge of the bed, his legs suddenly feeling weak. "So you're telling me I'm married to an alien queen because I touched a magic rock?" "The technology is not magic, but yes, essentially that is correct." Cyrilyn moved to sit beside him, though she left a respectful distance between them. "The bonding ritual was completed while you slept. We are now joined according to the laws of my people." "Joined," Jake repeated. He looked at her. Really looked at her. Despite her alien appearance, there was something almost human in her expression. She looked worried. Maybe even a little sad. "Can we unjoin? Can you send me back to my ship?" "The bonding can be undone, but not immediately. Our law requires a trial period of 1 lunar cycle, approximately 1 of your Earth months. During this time, we must live together as husband and wife. At the end of the cycle, if you wish to dissolve the bond, you may do so. And if I want to leave now?" Cyrilyn's eyes dimmed slightly. "The bonding technology has already merged our neural patterns on a quantum level. If the bond is broken prematurely, before the patterns have time to settle, both of us will suffer severe psychological damage, possibly permanent. And there is another consideration." "Of course there is," Jake muttered. "I am not just a queen. I am the queen of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. If you refuse the bond after the trial period, it will be seen as a grave insult. Not just to me, but to my entire people. Relations between your species and mine could be damaged for generations. There might even be war." "Bot. Bot. Bot." Jake stood up and walked to the nearest wall. He pressed his palm against the smooth surface, feeling it pulse with warmth. This was real. This was actually happening. He had gone to sleep in his cramped quarters on a beat-up freighter, and he had woken up married to an alien queen in a palace made of living crystal. "I'm a cargo pilot," he said quietly. "I'm nobody special. I barely finished school. I spend most of my time alone in space hauling boxes from one rock to another. Why would your magic beacon choose me? I do not know, Cyrillin admitted. She had stood as well, and now approached him slowly. The beacons make their own choices, but they have never been wrong. In all our history, every bonding they have arranged has led to strength for our people. Jake turned to face her. What if I'm the first mistake? Then we will face that together, at the end of the trial period. But for now, we are bound. I ask only that you give this a chance. Give me a chance. Give us a chance. There was something in her voice, a vulnerability that seemed strange coming from someone who called herself a queen. Jake thought about his options. He could refuse, could demand to be sent home right now. But if what she said was true about the psychological damage, he might end up a vegetable. And even if he was willing to risk that, could he really be responsible for starting a war between humanity and an alien empire? 1 month, he said finally. 1 month, Cyrillin agreed. And then I'm free to leave if I want to. Yes. Though I hope you will choose to stay. Jake looked around the crystal chamber again, then back at the alien queen who was apparently his wife. I'm going to need some coffee. Please tell me your people have coffee. For the first time, Cyrillin's expression changed to something that might have been amusement. We do not have coffee. But we have something similar. Come. I will show you the palace. You should see your new home. My temporary home, Jake corrected. Of course, Cyrillin said. But there was something in her swirling eyes that suggested she didn't quite believe him. As they walked through the archway together, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't begin to understand. 1 month suddenly seemed like a very long time. The palace was beyond anything Jake had ever imagined. As Cyrillin led him through corridors that seemed to shift and change shape, he tried to process what he was seeing. The walls were alive, literally alive, with patterns of light flowing through them like blood through veins. Gardens grew from impossible angles, with plants that hummed softly and flowers that opened and closed in response to their presence. They passed other beings, all of them similar to Cyrillin in their basic form but with variations in color and size. Every single one of them stopped and stared at Jake. Some looked curious, others looked shocked, and a few looked openly hostile. Jake tried to ignore the stares and kept walking. This is the central spire, Cyrillin explained, as they entered a massive chamber with windows that showed a view Jake's brain struggled to accept. They weren't on a planet. They were in space, orbiting what looked like 2 stars, circling each other. The city spread out around them, a collection of structures that defied gravity and logic, all connected by bridges of light. Luminara Prime, the heart of the Valorian Empire. 3 billion of my people call this place home. 3 billion. Jake repeated. He felt very small suddenly. Back home, he had been just another guy trying to make a living. Here, he was apparently married to the ruler of 3 billion advanced aliens. The absurdity of it made him want to laugh or scream. He wasn't sure which. A door at the far end of the chamber opened, and 3 people walked in. 2 of them were Valorians, dressed in formal robes similar to what Cyrillin wore. The third was human, a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and wearing a dark suit that looked painfully out of place in the crystalline palace. Your Majesty, the woman said, bowing slightly to Cyrillin. I'm Ambassador Lisa Crane, the diplomatic representative from Earth to the Valorian Empire. I arrived as soon as I heard about your situation. My situation, Jake said. Is that what we're calling it? We're calling it a lot of things back home, Lisa said. Most of them aren't appropriate for mixed company. Admiral Kyle Henderson, of the Earth Defense Fleet, is on his way. He should arrive within the hour. In the meantime, I need to brief you on exactly how much of a mess this has created. Cyrillin gestured to a seating area that Jake hadn't noticed before. As they sat down, furniture seemed to grow out of the floor to accommodate them. Jake tried not to think too hard about it. The bonding was announced to both our peoples simultaneously, Lisa began. Earth's government is in an uproar. You're the first human to marry into an alien royal family, and no one knows quite what to make of it. Some see it as an unprecedented opportunity for closer relations with the Valorians. Others think you've been kidnapped and are demanding your immediate return. I didn't exactly volunteer for this, Jake pointed out. I understand that. But the situation is delicate. The Valorian Empire is one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They have technology we can barely understand, and resources that would take us centuries to develop on our own. We've had peaceful relations with them for 20 years, but we're still very much the new kids on the galactic block. This marriage could either strengthen our position or destroy everything we've built. One of the Valorians spoke up. He was smaller than Sierra Lynn, with skin that was more blue than violet. I am Prince Tholvex, brother to the Queen. I want it known that I opposed this bonding from the moment it was announced. Humans are primitive. You have barely left your own solar system. The idea that one of you could be consort to the Queen of Valorian is absurd. Tholvex, Sierra Lynn said sharply. That is enough, is it? Look at him, sister. He doesn't even know how to properly sit in the presence of royalty. He slouches like a common laborer. Our bloodline has remained pure for 10,000 years, and now you dilute it with this cargo hauler. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. He had been dealing with people looking down on him his whole life. Rich kids who thought they were better than him because their parents had money. Officers who treated civilian pilots like dirt. And now an alien prince who thought humans were beneath him. You know what? Jake stood up. You're right. I am a cargo hauler. I spent the last 10 years of my life moving boxes because it was honest work and it paid the bills. I never asked to be brought here. I never asked to marry your sister. But here I am. So maybe instead of insulting me, you could try being helpful. The room went very quiet. Tholvex's eyes swirled rapidly, which Jake was learning meant strong emotion. The other Valorian, an older female with silver skin, looked like she was trying not to smile. You dare speak to a prince of Valorian in such a manner? Tholvex demanded. I dare speak to anyone in any manner when they're being rude, Jake shot back. Where I come from, respect goes both ways. You want me to treat you like a prince? Fine. Treat me like a person instead of a mistake. Lisa looked like she was having a heart attack. Mr. Morrison, perhaps we should. Actually, the silver-skinned Valorian interrupted. I find his directness refreshing. I am High Priestess Velmora. I perform the bonding ritual. Young human, you show spirit. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring. The walls of the chamber flashed red, and Valorian guards rushed in from multiple entrances. Sierra Lynn stood immediately, her forearms moving in complex patterns as holographic displays appeared in the air around her. What's happening? Jake asked. An attack, Sierra Lynn said. Her voice had changed, becoming harder and more commanding. Someone has breached the palace defenses. Stay here, all of you. Guards will protect you. She moved toward the door. But Jake grabbed her arm. Wait, if someone's attacking, shouldn't you be somewhere safe? Sierra Lynn looked down at his hand on her arm, then at his face. I am the queen. My place is with my people, defending them. This is not negotiable. She pulled away and swept out of the room. Half the guards went with her, while the other half formed a protective circle around Jake, Lisa, Tholvex, and Velmora. This is because of you, Tholvex said to Jake. Someone wants to stop this bonding before it can be completed. Your presence here has made my sister a target. Jake felt guilt twist in his stomach, but Velmora shook her head. Do not listen to him. Sierra Lynn has enemies who have sought her downfall for years. They simply use this as an excuse. The sounds of fighting reached them from somewhere in the palace. Energy weapons fired with sounds like thunder, and Jake heard shouting in languages he didn't understand. The guards around them tensed, weapons raised. Then the door exploded inward. 3 figures came through the smoke and debris. They were Valorian, but their skin was darker, almost black, and their eyes glowed red instead of the normal swirling colors. They wore armor covered in spikes and carried weapons that hummed with dangerous energy. The guards fired immediately, beams of light streaking across the room. 2 of the attackers went down, but the third was faster. It moved like liquid, dodging the shots and closing the distance. Its weapons swung in a wide arc, and 2 guards fell. Jake didn't think. Years ago, before he became a pilot, he had served 2 years in Earth's military. The training came back to him in a rush. He grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, aimed, and fired. The beam caught the attacker in the shoulder, spinning it around. It wasn't a killing shot, but it gave the remaining guards time to finish the job. Within seconds, all 3 attackers were down. Jake stood there, the weapon still in his hands, breathing hard. Lisa was staring at him with wide eyes. Tholvex looked shocked. Velmora just nodded, as if he had confirmed something she already knew. "Well," Lisa said shakily, "that's going to make an interesting addition to my report." 1. Lisa said shakily. 5. I would be a bee in a video. More guards rushed in, led by Zira Lin. She scanned the room quickly, her eyes landing on Jake and the weapon he held. "You fought." "They didn't leave me much choice," Jake said. Zira Lin moved to him, her hands checking him for injuries. "You are unharmed." "Good." She turned to her guards. "Take the bodies to the security center. I want to know who sent them and how they breached our defenses." As the guards moved to obey, a new figure entered the room. He was human, wearing the uniform of Earth's defense fleet. He was in his late 40s, with short gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent his life in the military. "Admiral Henderson," Lisa said. "Your timing is impeccable, as always." "I got here as fast as I could," Kyle Henderson said. He looked at Jake, then at the scene of the fight, then back at Jake. "Morrison, I've read your file. Spent 2 years in the service, honorable discharge. Been flying cargo ever since. Nothing in there suggested you'd end up married to an alien queen and fighting off assassins in a palace made of crystal." "It's been a weird day," Jake said. Kyle almost smiled. "I bet it has. We need to talk, all of us." The situation just got a lot more complicated. They moved to a more secure location. A conference room deep in the palace where the walls were thick and guards stood at every entrance. As they sat down, Kyle pulled up holographic displays, showing news feeds from both human and Valorian sources. "The attack was coordinated with a propaganda campaign," he explained. "Someone is spreading the story that Jake was kidnapped by the Valorians and is being forced into this marriage. Back on Earth, there are protests demanding his release. Here, there are factions calling the bonding an insult to Valorian tradition. Whoever is behind this wants to drive a wedge between our species." "But why?" Jake asked. "What do they gain?" "Chaos," Zira Lin said quietly. "In chaos, there is opportunity. Someone wants to destabilize my rule. They want to create conflict between your people and mine. In the confusion, they could seize power. So what do we do?" Jake looked around the table. "I'm just a guy who touched the wrong rock. I don't know anything about politics or conspiracies." "You saved lives today," Velmora said. "You acted with courage and skill. That matters more than you know." "The priestess is right," Kyle said. "Like it or not, Morrison, you're at the center of something big. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Jake looked at Zira Lin. She was watching him with those strange, swirling eyes. In them, he saw hope and worry, mixed together. "I guess I'm going to see this through," he said finally. "Someone tried to kill people today. Because of me. That makes it personal." "Good," Kyle said, "because we're going to need all the help we can get." As the meeting continued into the night, Jake realized something. His quiet life was gone forever. Whether he stayed with Zira Lin after the trial period or not, he was part of something bigger now, something dangerous and important. He just hoped he was ready for it. The next few days passed in a blur. Jake found himself caught between two worlds, neither of which felt quite real. In the mornings, he attended formal gatherings with Valorian nobles who treated him with either cold politeness or barely concealed contempt. In the afternoons, he met with Kyle Henderson and Lisa Crane, trying to understand the complicated political situation he had stumbled into. And in the evenings, he spent time with Sierra Lynn, getting to know the woman who was technically his wife. It was during one of those evening meetings that Jake made his first real connection with her. They were in a private garden on one of the palace's highest levels, a place where plants from a dozen worlds grew in carefully controlled environments. Sierra Lynn had brought him there to escape the constant scrutiny of the court. "Do you miss your ship?" she asked. She was standing near a tree with silver leaves that chimed softly in the artificial breeze. "Yeah," Jake admitted. He was sitting on a bench, watching the twin stars set through the transparent dome above them. "It wasn't much, but it was mine. I knew every sound it made, every quirk in the systems. I knew what I was doing there. And here you do not. Here I'm completely lost. I don't understand your politics. I can't read your language. Half the time I don't even know if I'm being insulted or complimented because your facial expressions are so different from ours." Sierra Lynn came to sit beside him. It was the closest they had been since that first morning. "I am sorry. I know you did not choose this. But the beacon chose you for a reason. Everyone keeps saying that. But no one can tell me what the reason is. Perhaps we are meant to discover it together." She was quiet for a moment, then added, "I did not choose this either. You know, I knew the beacons were out there, but I never thought one would activate, certainly not with a human. My advisors told me I should refuse the bonding, that it would make me look weak. But the law is clear. When a beacon activates, the bonding must be honored. So we're both stuck in this mess," Jake said. "Yes. Which means perhaps we should stop fighting it and start trying to make it work." Jake turned to look at her. In the fading light of the twin stars, her violet skin seemed to glow even more brightly. "What did you do before you became queen? Did you have a life outside of politics?" "I have been groomed for the throne since birth. My mother died when I was young, and my father ruled for 300 years before passing the crown to me. I have studied governance, diplomacy, military strategy, and a dozen other subjects. But a life outside of duty? No. I have never had that. That sounds lonely." "It is. Very lonely." Her voice was soft, almost sad. "The crown weighs heavily, Jake Morrison. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be free of it, to be just ex-Sierra Lynn instead of Queen Sierra Lynn. What would you do?" "If you were free?" She thought about it. "I would like to see things, not as a queen on a state visit, but as just someone traveling. I would like to visit worlds I have only read about. I would like to try foods I have never tasted. I would like to—" She paused, as if embarrassed. "What?" "I would like to dance. Not the formal court dances I have been taught, but the wild, joyful dances I have seen in recordings from other worlds, where people move however they wish, without rules or judgment." Jake smiled. "You know, I might be able to help with that. Humans are pretty good at wild, joyful dancing." Before Sierra Lynn could respond, an alarm sounded. It was different from the one during the attack. Lower and more insistent. Sierra Lynn stood immediately, her expression changing to one of concern. "What is it?" Jake asked. "A security alert. Someone has been caught trying to access restricted areas of the palace." They hurried back inside, where they found Kyle Henderson waiting with a Valorian guard Jake had come to recognize. His name was Kale, and unlike most Valorians, he seemed to actually like Jake. "We caught an intruder," Kale said. "But you need to see this." They were accessing the palace archives, specifically files about the bonding beacons. They followed him to a secure holding area. Behind a transparent barrier that hummed with energy sat a Valorian female with dark green skin. She looked young, maybe equivalent to a human in their 20s. When she saw Sierra Lynn, She didn't look afraid. She looked angry. "Why were you in the archives?" Sierra Lynn demanded. "Because someone needs to know the truth," the girl spat back. "The beacons aren't what you think they are. The bonding isn't some mystical destiny. It's technology. And technology can be manipulated." "Explain," Sierra Lynn said. The girl looked at Jake. "You want to know why you were chosen? Human? It wasn't fate. Someone programmed the beacon to select you specifically. The bonding wasn't random. It was engineered." The room went silent. Jake felt his stomach drop. "What are you talking about?" "I'm a technician. I work in the system archives. I found anomalies in the beacon's activation sequence. Someone altered its programming 3 months ago. They set it to trigger when a specific genetic profile touched it." Kyle stepped forward. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" The girl nodded. "I downloaded the data before they caught me. It's all there. The beacon was supposed to search for compatible partners naturally. But someone overrode its systems. They chose you, deliberately." "Who?" Sierra Lynn's voice was cold. "Who would do this?" "I don't know. The alterations were hidden behind layers of encryption. But whoever did it had high-level access to our most secure systems. It had to be someone with power. Someone close to the throne." Jake's mind was racing. If what she said was true, then everything was a lie. He wasn't chosen by some ancient mystical process. Someone had manipulated events to make this happen. But why? "Duke Renzar," Sierra Lynn said suddenly. She turned to Kale. "Bring him here. Now." "Your Majesty," Kale hesitated. "If you accuse a duke without proof, then bring the proof. Take this technician's data, verify it, and find me Duke Renzar." As Kale hurried away, Jake grabbed Sierra Lynn's arm. "Wait. Who is Duke Renzar?" "My uncle. My father's brother. He believed the throne should have passed to him instead of me. He has been a thorn in my side for years, but I never had proof of any wrongdoing. If he is behind this, why would he want me bonded to you?" Jake asked. "How does that help him?" It was the technician who answered. "Because it makes you look weak. A human consort is controversial. It divides your support. It gives your enemies ammunition. And if the bonding ends badly, it could spark conflict between humans and Valorians. Chaos is opportunity, right? In the confusion, someone else could seize power." Kyle nodded slowly. "It makes sense. It's actually a clever plan. The only thing they didn't count on was Morrison not being a complete disaster." "Thanks," Jake said dryly. "I think, over the next several hours, things moved quickly." Kyle returned with a team of technicians who verified the data the intruder had provided. The evidence was clear. The beacon had been tampered with. Someone had deliberately engineered Jake's bonding to Sierra Lynn. When Duke Renzar was brought before them, he denied everything at first. He was an older Valorian, with copper-colored skin and eyes that held nothing but contempt for Jake. But when faced with the evidence, his denials became weaker. Finally, when confronted with security footage showing him accessing the beacon archives, he broke. "Yes, I did it," he snarled. "I altered the beacon. I arranged for it to be placed where this human would find it. And I would do it again. You are not fit to rule. Sierra Lynn, you are too soft, too weak. The Empire needs strong leadership. And you think that leadership should be yours?" Sierra Lynn's voice was ice. "I am of the royal bloodline. I have the right. Your father made a mistake passing the crown to you, instead of me. I merely sought to correct that mistake. By starting a war? By putting innocent lives at risk?" Jake found himself speaking up. "I'm nobody. I'm just a guy who flies cargo. But you were willing to use me as a pawn in your power play. You were willing to risk conflict between entire species just to get what you want." Renzar turned his contempt on Jake. "You are nothing. A useful tool. Nothing more. The fact that my niece has allowed you to remain here this long only proves how unfit she is to rule. Exiralin raised one of her 4 hands, and guards immediately moved forward to take Renzar into custody. You will be tried for treason. If found guilty, you will be exiled to the outer reaches, where you can contemplate your failures for the rest of your days. As Renzar was led away, still shouting about the injustice of it all, Jake felt exhausted. He sat down heavily, trying to process everything. So it was all fake, he said quietly. The beacon, the bonding, all of it was just someone's political scheme. Ziralin sat beside him. The circumstances were manipulated, yes. But the bonding itself is real. The neural connection between us is genuine. That cannot be faked. Does it matter? We're only together because someone programmed a machine to pick me. We are together because someone saw in you qualities they thought would make me appear weak, Ziralin said. But they were wrong about you, Jake Morrison. You have shown courage, intelligence, and honor. You have fought to protect my people. You have faced adversity with grace. The beacon may have been manipulated, but it still chose well. Jake wanted to be angry. He wanted to rage at the manipulation, at being used as a pawn. But sitting there in the palace, with Ziralin beside him and the weight of everything that had happened pressing down, he found he couldn't summon the energy. What happens now? He asked. Now we root out the rest of Renzar's conspirators. Now we show both our peoples that this bonding was not a weakness, but a strength. Now we prove that we are stronger together than anyone expected. And if I still want to leave at the end of the trial period? Ziralin was quiet for a moment. Then you leave. The choice is yours. And it always has been. But I hope you will consider staying. Not because of destiny or political necessity, but because... She trailed off. Because what? Because I find myself hoping that we could be more than just 2 people caught in someone else's scheme. I hope we could be partners. Friends. Maybe even something more. And... Jake looked at her. In her swirling galaxy eyes, he saw vulnerability and hope. She was a queen. Powerful and ancient by human standards. But she was also just someone who was lonely and looking for connection. We still have 3 weeks left, he said. Maybe we should spend them actually getting to know each other, instead of just dealing with political crises. Ziralin smiled. It was the first time Jake had seen a real smile from her, and it transformed her face. I would like that very much. I would like that very much. As they sat together in the quiet aftermath of the conspiracy's exposure, Jake realized something. Maybe the circumstances had been fake, but what was growing between them felt real. And maybe, just maybe, that was what mattered. The palace felt different after Renzar's arrest. Some of the tension that had hung in the air seemed to lift, replaced by something Jake couldn't quite name. Cautious optimism, maybe. Or perhaps just relief that the immediate threat was over. Jake and Ziralin started spending more time together, real time, not just political meetings or formal dinners. She showed him the hidden parts of the palace, places where she went when she needed to escape the weight of the crown. He told her stories about Earth, about the small town where he grew up and the people he had known. Slowly, carefully, they began to build something genuine. It was during one of these quiet moments that the alarms went off again. But this time it wasn't an intruder or an assassination attempt. This was different. This was war. Jake was in the garden with Ziralin when Kale came running in. The guard's expression was grave. Your Majesty, we have a situation. The Crethon swarm has awakened. End quote. Waited have a long cesses awakened. Endedation by con. Waitedation by con. Ziralin went very still. Are you certain? Yes. They emerged from the galactic core 6 hours ago. 3 systems have already gone dark. They're expanding rapidly. Jake stood up. What's the Crethon swarm? An ancient enemy, Ziralin said. Her voice was tight. a hive mind species that has slept for centuries. When they are active, they consume everything in their path: worlds, resources, civilizations. They rushed to the command center, where holographic displays showed the growing threat. The Crethon were represented by spreading red areas on the galactic map, expanding outward like a disease. Jake watched as system after system fell to the swarm. Kyle Henderson was already there, along with Lisa Crane and several high-ranking Valorian military officers. One of them, a large male with silver skin and 3 times the usual number of arms, was speaking rapidly. The swarm is larger than we anticipated. Initial estimates suggest billions of individual units. Their ships are organic, able to repair damage and adapt to our weapons. Traditional tactics are proving ineffective. What about the other major powers? Ziralin asked. Have you contacted the Terran Alliance? The Crystalline Collective? Messages have been sent, but many are hesitant to commit forces. They remember the last time the Crethon awakened. Entire civilizations were wiped out. Jake studied the maps, his mind racing. He was a cargo pilot, not a military strategist. But he had spent years navigating through dangerous space, avoiding pirates and natural hazards. He understood movement and logistics in a way that most people didn't. Can I ask something? He said. Everyone turned to look at him. These Crethon, they're expanding in all directions at once, right? Yes, the silver officer confirmed. They spread like wildfire, consuming everything. But that means they're stretching their forces thin. They're trying to grab as much territory as fast as possible, which means their supply lines must be vulnerable. Kyle leaned forward. What are you thinking, Morrison? Back on Earth, we had this strategy in the old wars. When an enemy is advancing quickly, you don't try to stop the advance head-on. You cut off their supplies, hit their logistics, make them overextend until they collapse. The Valorian officer's multiple eyes focused on Jake. The Crethon do not have supply lines in the traditional sense. They consume resources from the planets they conquer. But they have to transport those resources back to their core, right? They have to communicate across their swarm. There has to be infrastructure holding it all together. Shiralin was looking at him with something like admiration. He is correct. The Crethon use relay stations to coordinate their hive mind across vast distances. If we could identify and destroy those stations, we could fragment the swarm, Kyle finished. Turn one massive threat into dozens of smaller, more manageable ones. It would require precise strikes deep in enemy territory, the silver officer said. Not if we're smart about it, Jake said. He moved to the display and started manipulating it, drawing on his knowledge of space navigation. Look, here, these systems the Crethon just took. They were mining colonies, right? That means they have asteroid fields, debris, places to hide. Small, fast ships could get in, hit the relay stations, and get out before the swarm could respond. Human ships are small and fast, Kyle said slowly. Our fleet isn't as powerful as the Valorian Navy, but we're more maneuverable. And Valorian shields are far superior to human technology, Ziralin added. If we combined your speed with our defenses, we could build a joint task force, Jake said. Humans and Valorians working together. Hit and run tactics. Strike fast, strike hard, and keep the swarm off balance. The room went quiet. Then the silver officer spoke. It is an unorthodox strategy. But these are unorthodox times. I am General Korth. I command the Valorian Third Fleet. If the Queen approves, I would be willing to work with the human forces on this plan. Ziralin looked at Kyle. Admiral Henderson, can Earth provide ships for this mission? We have a battle group in the sector. I can have them here in 2 days. But I need to clear this with Earth Command first. Tell them, Jake said, that this isn't just about protecting Valorian space anymore. The Crethon are expanding toward human colonies too. We're all in this together. whether we like it or not. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Jake found himself in the middle of it all, helping to coordinate between human and Valorian forces. He wasn't a military commander, but his experience navigating space and his ability to think practically made him valuable. He also discovered that he had a talent for translation, not of language but of culture. The humans and Valorians approached warfare differently, and they often talked past each other without realizing it. Jake could bridge that gap, explaining human tactical thinking to the Valorians and Valorian strategic philosophy to the humans. When the Earth fleet arrived, Jake stood with Zira Lin on the observation deck, watching the human ships take up formation alongside their Valorian counterparts. The contrast was striking. The human vessels were angular and industrial, built for function over beauty. The Valorian ships were elegant, flowing things that looked more like works of art than weapons of war. They are so different, Zira Lin observed. Yeah. But maybe that's good. Different strengths, different approaches. Together they might be stronger than either would be alone. Like us, she said quietly. Jake looked at her. Over the past 2 weeks, she had become familiar to him. He no longer saw just an alien queen. He saw someone who laughed at his terrible jokes, who shared his love of old music, who worried about her people, and sometimes doubted herself even though she would never show that doubt to anyone else. Yeah, he said. Like us. The first mission launched the next day. 6 ships, 3 human and 3 Valorian, headed deep into Crethon space to hit a relay station. Jake watched from the command center, his hands clenched tight. Zira Lin stood beside him, and he could feel the tension radiating from her. The mission took 8 hours. 8 hours of waiting, of watching the clock, of hoping the plan would work. When the ships finally returned, they had lost 1 human vessel and 1 Valorian, but they had succeeded. The relay station was destroyed. It worked, General Korth said, studying the data. The swarm in that sector is fragmenting, losing coordination. Morrison's strategy is sound. More missions followed. The joint task force grew as other species, seeing the success, contributed ships and personnel. Humans and Valorians learned to work together, combining their different strengths. Slowly, painfully, they began to turn the tide. But the cost was high. Jake attended memorial services for fallen pilots, both human and Valorian. He saw the toll the war was taking on everyone, and he saw how Zira Lin carried the weight of every loss, even though she never let it show in public. One night, 3 weeks after the war began, Jake found her in her private chambers. She was standing by a window, looking out at the stars. She didn't notice him at first, and he saw tears on her face, glowing faintly in the dim light. Zira Lin, he said softly. She turned, and for a moment he saw raw pain in her eyes. Then she composed herself, wiping away the tears. I did not hear you enter. Are you okay? I am fine. I am the queen. I must be strong. Even queens are allowed to be sad, Jake said. He moved to stand beside her. We lost 12 ships today. It's okay to grieve for them. If I allow myself to grieve for all we have lost, I will drown in it. There is too much death, too much suffering, and it is my responsibility. I am their queen. I should protect them. But I cannot save everyone. No one can save everyone. But you're doing everything you can. You're fighting for them. You're making impossible decisions every day. That's what leadership is. Is it enough? I don't know. But it's all any of us can do. Zira Lin was quiet for a moment. Then she said, The trial period ended yesterday. In all the chaos, I forgot. You are free to leave now if you wish. The bonding can be dissolved without consequence. Jake had forgotten too. 1 month had passed. He could go home now. Back to his ship. Back to his quiet life of hauling cargo. No one would blame him. He had done more than anyone could have asked. Do you want me to leave? he asked. No, she said simply. I want you to stay. Not because of politics or duty, but because I have come to care for you. These past weeks, you have been my anchor. When everything else is chaos, you are steady. You make me laugh when I want to cry. You challenge me when I need to be challenged. You see me as Xira Lin, not just as the queen. I do not want to lose that. I do not want to lose you. Jake felt something shift in his chest. Somewhere along the way, this alien woman had become important to him. More than important. She had become someone he couldn't imagine his life without. I don't want to leave, he said. I want to stay. Not because I have to, but because I choose to. Because when I think about going back to my old life, it feels empty. Because you've become the most important person in my life, and I can't imagine giving that up. Xira Lin's eyes swirled with colors he had learned meant happiness. Then, stay. Be my partner. Truly. Help me lead our people through this war, and whatever comes after. Together. Together, Jake agreed. She moved closer. And for the first time since they met, they kissed. It was strange and wonderful. Different from kissing a human but no less meaningful. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. Outside the window, the war continued. The Crethons still threatened the galaxy. There were battles to fight, and decisions to make, and losses to endure. But in that moment, Jake and Xira Lin had found something worth fighting for. Each other. The war against the Crethon swarm dragged on for months. What started as a crisis became a way of life. The Joint Human-Valorian Task Force grew into something larger, a coalition of species working together to push back the swarm. And at the heart of it all were Jake and Xira Lin, the unlikely pair who had become a symbol of cooperation across the galaxy. Jake's role evolved naturally. He wasn't a military commander in the traditional sense, but his practical thinking and ability to bridge cultures made him invaluable. The humans trusted him because he was one of them, and the Valorians respected him because their queen did. Other species saw him as proof that newcomers to the galactic stage could contribute meaningfully. It was during a strategy meeting 6 months into the war that everything changed. They were gathered in the command center, studying reports from the front lines. General Korth was presenting data on Crethon movements when Kyle Henderson interrupted. Wait, look at this pattern. He pulled up a different display. The swarm is consolidating. They're pulling back from the outer edges of their expansion and concentrating forces here. He pointed to a region of space near the galactic core. Asking, they are preparing for something, Xira Lin said. But what? A Valorian scientist named Leora, who had been working with human researchers, spoke up. We have been analyzing Crethon communication patterns. We think they are building something. A weapon, perhaps. Or a ship. Something big. How big? Jake asked. Big enough to change the course of the war. If they complete it, we might not be able to stop them. The room went silent. They had been making progress, slowly pushing the Crethon back. But if the swarm completed some kind of superweapon, all that progress would mean nothing. Then we have to stop them from completing it, Xira Lin said. Over the next few weeks, plans were made and remade. The coalition forces would launch a massive assault on the Crethon core, attempting to destroy whatever the swarm was building before it could be finished. Every available ship would be committed to the attack. It would be the largest space battle in recorded history. Jake found himself working 18-hour days, coordinating logistics and helping to plan the assault. He barely slept, surviving on coffee and the Valorian equivalent. Xira Lin was just as busy, managing not just the military operation, but also the political aspects of keeping the coalition together. It was 3 days before the planned assault, when tragedy struck. Kyle Henderson's flagship was ambushed during a routine patrol. The ship was destroyed with all hands. The admiral who had become Jake's friend and advisor was gone. Jake took the news hard. He stood in his quarters, staring at the wall, unable to process what he was feeling. When Zira Lin found him there hours later, he finally broke down. "He was one of the first people to treat me like I belonged here," Jake said. "Everyone else looked at me like I was a mistake or a political problem. But Kyle just saw me as another person trying to do the right thing. And now, he's gone." Zira Lin held him while he grieved. "He believed in you. He believed in what we were building together. The best way to honor him is to finish what we started." The day of the assault arrived. Jake stood on the bridge of the command ship, watching thousands of vessels move into position. Human ships flew alongside Valorian ones, joined by vessels from a dozen other species. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "All forces report ready," General Korth announced. Zira Lin stood at the center of the bridge, commanding attention without saying a word. When she spoke, her voice was broadcast to every ship in the fleet. "Today we face an enemy that has terrorized the galaxy for millennia. The Crethon swarm knows only consumption and destruction. They have taken our worlds, killed our people, and threatened everything we hold dear. But they made one crucial mistake. They united us. Species that have never worked together now fight side by side. Old enemies have become allies. And together, we are stronger than they ever imagined possible." She paused, letting her words sink in. "This battle will determine the fate of the galaxy. Some of us will not survive it, but those who do will tell stories of this day for generations. They will speak of the day we stood together and said no more." The fleet erupted in cheers and battle cries in 100 languages. Then, the order was given, and they jumped into the heart of Crethon space. The battle was chaos. The Crethon were waiting for them, billions of organic ships swarming like angry insects. The coalition forces pushed forward, weapons firing constantly. Ships exploded on both sides, blooming like deadly flowers in the darkness of space. Jake coordinated the fleet movements from the command ship, using his knowledge of navigation to help ships avoid collisions and find optimal firing positions. Beside him, Zira Lin made split-second decisions about troop deployments and tactical maneuvers. They worked together like they had been doing this for years instead of months. Then they saw it. At the center of the Crethon forces was a structure unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon, made of organic material that pulsed with sickly green light. Energy crackled across its surface, and Jake could feel the power radiating from it even through the ship's shields. "That is what they have been building," Leora said, her voice filled with horror. "A hive mind amplifier. If they activate it, they will be able to coordinate across unlimited distances instantly. The swarm would become unstoppable." "Then we destroy it," Zira Lin said. "All ships, concentrate fire on the central structure." The fleet obeyed, but the Crethon defended their creation fiercely. For every ship that got close enough to fire on the structure, 2 more were destroyed. The casualties were mounting rapidly. "We are not going to make it," General Korth said grimly. "The defenses are too strong." Jake studied the tactical display, his mind racing. There had to be a way. Then he saw it. A pattern in the Crethon defenses. They were concentrating their forces on the direct approaches to the structure, but there was a gap, a blind spot, where the defenses were weaker. "There," he said, pointing. "If we hit them from that angle, we can get through." "That approach vector is impossible," Korth objected. "It would require flying through the debris field from the destroyed ships. The navigation would be too complex. For most pilots, yeah. But I've been flying through debris fields and asteroid belts my whole career. I can do it." Zira Lin turned to look at him. "You are talking about a suicide run. I'm talking about the only way to win this battle. Get me a fast ship with good shields. I'll punch through their defenses and plant charges on that thing. Once it's destabilized, the fleet can finish it off." "No," Zira Lin said firmly. "I will not allow it. We will find another way. There is no other way. You know that. Every minute we wait, more people die. Let me do this. They stared at each other, and Jake saw pain in her swirling eyes. I only just found you. I cannot lose you now. You won't lose me. I'm a good pilot, Cyrillin. The best, actually. Trust me. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she nodded slowly. Kale will go with you. You will need someone to set the charges while you pilot. Your Majesty, Kyle protested, but Cyrillin silenced him with a look. Keep him alive, Kale. That is a direct order from your queen. 20 minutes later, Jake was strapped into the pilot seat of a small Valorian fighter. Kale sat behind him, checking the explosive charges they would need to plant. The ship was fast and heavily shielded, built for exactly this kind of desperate mission. Ready? Jake asked. No, Kale replied honestly. But let us do this anyway. Jake launched the ship and immediately pushed it to maximum speed. The battle raged around them as he wove through the debris field, dodging destroyed ships and weapons fire. His training from years of cargo flying took over, and he found himself moving on pure instinct. The Crethon noticed them quickly, but Jake was already past their main defenses. Enemy ships pursued them, firing constantly. Alarms blared as their shields took hit after hit, but Jake kept flying. He could do this. He had to do this. They reached the structure, and Kale deployed, using a zero-gravity suit to move across the organic surface, while Jake kept the ship close, drawing fire away from him. It felt like hours but was probably only minutes before Kale was back inside. Charges planted. Get us out of here. Jake punched the engines, and the ship leaped forward. Behind them, the charges detonated in a chain reaction, and the entire structure began to collapse. The Crethon forces, losing coordination, started to fragment and scatter. All ships, hit them now. Cyrillin's voice came over the comm. Finish this. The coalition fleet surged forward, tearing through the disorganized Crethon forces. Within hours, the battle was over. The swarm was broken, fragmented into small groups that could be hunted down over time. Jake returned to the command ship to find Cyrillin waiting for him. She didn't say anything, just pulled him into an embrace that conveyed everything she was feeling. Relief, fear, love, all mixed together. That was foolish, she said into his shoulder. That was necessary, he replied. It was both. The war wasn't over completely. It took another year to hunt down the remaining Crethon forces and ensure they couldn't regroup. But the back of the swarm was broken, and the coalition held together, species working together to rebuild what had been lost. 5 years after Jake first touched that beacon, he stood in a new building on Earth. The joint human-Valorian embassy was a marvel of combined architecture, blending the best of both species' designs. Diplomats and scientists moved through its halls, and in the courtyard, children played together. Human children and Valorian children, learning from each other, growing up in a galaxy that was more united than it had ever been. And playing among them was a little girl with violet-tinged skin and eyes that swirled with stars. Aria, the daughter of Jake Morrison and Queen Cyrillin. She was living proof that two species could create something beautiful together. She has your stubbornness, Cyrillin observed, watching their daughter refuse to give up on climbing a tree that was clearly too tall for her. And your determination? Jake replied. Poor kid never had a chance. Cyrillin laughed, and Jake marveled at how far they had come. From that first confused morning, when he woke up in a crystal chamber, to this moment, watching their daughter play under an Earth sunset that Cyrillin had never seen before coming here. Do you ever regret it? Cyrillin asked. That morning you woke up married to an alien queen? Jake thought about everything that had happened. The fear and confusion, the battles and losses, the triumph and love. He thought about Kyle Henderson and all the others who had died so that this moment could exist. He thought about his old life, quiet and safe and ultimately empty. No, he said honestly. Every choice I made after that morning I made freely. And all those choices led me here. To you. To our daughter. To this life. I wouldn't change any of it. In the distance, human and Valorian children laughed together. The galaxy had changed, and at the center of that change was a cargo pilot who woke up one morning to find he was married to an alien queen. And somehow, impossibly, wonderfully, it had all worked out.